Thank you for coming. We have a real you're in a real treat today because we have one of the most extraordinary story about working with JFrog by one of our most advanced, I would say, customers in a very challenging environment. And we're going to talk about the JFrog story in Siemens. And I have two extraordinary guests for me today, Maria and Imre. And I will let you introduce yourself, and then we'll start talking about the cool stuff that you do.
Hello. So my name is Maria Küster, and I'm working as IT service manager by Siemens, and I manage the service Artifactory service by Siemens.
Justice.
Oh, yes,
Justice.
it's important.
So my name is Imre Pém, and I have to tell I work for another company called Evosoft, which is owned by Siemens, and this is how I can work on this. I think I'm privileged to work on this project, and I joined to this project 2 years ago, and now I'm technical lead for these solutions, and I in the process of becoming a service architect on these things.
Welcome. So again, thank you very much for coming all the way from overseas. And let's start. We have the good news about this panel is opposite to the keynote one that I had to rush over because I didn't have time. We have plenty of time. We have 45 minutes, so we'll take it slow and we will talk about everything that we want to talk. And then 25 more in the discussion zones. Let's start with the beginning. How your journey with JFrog started? Where did you start from?
So, as you know, Siemens is a really big company, having a lot of developers working on different technology in different development environment, and all these people have the same problem, what to do with binaries. Nevertheless, if they're working with TFS, or they're working with GitHub, or with ClearCase, nevertheless, the problem is what to do with binaries. And then they came to us and said, hey, what about to set up a dedicated service serving our binaries, nevertheless, in which environment we are working, or we're working with NuGet, with NPM, Maven, and so on. The important is we need to have some binaries manager. So the result was, okay, let's set it up as a global IT service by Siemens, be used by many developers. Maybe Imre can tell something more about it, because he's from beginning with me on setting up this service.
Yes, this is from a decision point of view, from technical point of view, we started from zero. When I joined to the team, we had only one test server with one license, and my first task was to install Apache because we first tried with IIS and it was not really working out well. So we started and learned a lot of things. We were involved in the community, learned a lot from JFrog, from other companies' documentations all around. So now we have a bigger system. If you are interested, I can show a few slides about them. So, as Maria mentioned, the numbers. Currently we have 11 locations around the world, which includes 17 RTF instances. And I just calculated recently, we have 39 servers, including high availability database stuff. And more important numbers, continents, and we have one supplier, JFrog. Yes, and one team. We are working in Hungary and Germany as well. And currently we have around 100 projects. It's always changing, increasing, that are using our service within Siemens, and it involves around 6,000 users.
So how many people? How many people actually serve those 6,000 users?
Well, the team is 9 person.
Yeah.
So
that's a ratio of almost 1 to 800,
yeah.
right? Which is I think that's the super DevOps as Yoav referred to them yesterday. That's exactly that, right? Those are the small teams, and there are different names. Your call is IT tools. Your team, what's the name?
Our team.
Yeah.
We are Artifactory service.
Yes, right. So there are different names, but in an essence, those are the people that actually enable DevOps for the organizations, right? Everybody obviously do DevOps because it's not a role, but a practice and a culture. But someone needs to set up the rules, set up the tools, set up the processes, the projects, and that's exactly what you do. So when you rolled it out, what were your requirements? What were you looking for?
So the first project came to us was a little bit bigger project, having around several thousand developers spread worldwide. And they said, okay, we definitely need some binaries manager system. We need that this system be really performant, be served by several thousand users spread worldwide. We need very, very high availability of this server because in each our build we will need to access this server, and we need high secure system. If I talk about high secure system, that means with the highest integrity level possible by Siemens, and that means with very, very secure systems, with very secure data centers we have. That was the requirements set up to us, and then we started to set up such service, maybe.
Yes, so basically they wanted it all, everything, secure, available, yeah.
Yes. And of course, in the case of these projects, if the server is not available for several minutes, that means breaks for a lot of builds. That means 1,000 developers are waiting for the builds. 1,000 developers are blocked. That means millions of lost for Siemens.
And we got that a lot, especially in the previous years. Who needs HA for an artifact management? So the worst case scenario, Artifactory is down a couple of minutes. What's wrong with that? And today, I think, especially in the enterprise and bigger customers and users, that's not the question anymore. It's obviously that you bring the entire pipeline to production to a halt, and company actually loses money. And just one downtime can be more expensive than any HA solution that you want to put in place to prevent that. Right? Yeah. So, kind of what business problems or technical problems you wanted to solve with having Artifactory and then the rest of the JFrog tools?
So there were several problems we wanted to resolve. Let's start with the biggest problem we had in company. For years, we are using TFS as development line in our company. And what happened? We put everything there, even binaries. With the years, what happened? We have one of the biggest instances of TFS in Europe with over 15 terabytes database. And if you put 15 terabytes of blobs in SQL database, what happens? The system slows. The system slows, that means performance is low, that means development is low. And that was the main problem we faced in the last years, and we had to resolve it. How we can resolve it? Kick out the binaries from the TFS. Kick out and find the proper system for it. The system designed to manage the binaries, and of course it was Artifactory. The second use case was, okay, we want to develop with Git. Okay, but binaries and Git, no, it doesn't fit, definitely. We need some system to use to host binaries, and it was Artifactory. And the third use case we had, a lot of projects in Siemens still working with clear case, and then they wanted to switch to the newer technology like Git, like Jenkins, like Artifactory, and that was the reason why they asked us, come on, give us some good system.
Yes, I just want to mention that some of the companies that are around here, they are started years ago, and they can use cutting edge stuff. And we also are working towards that, but many of our projects started decades ago, and it's a challenge to accommodate them, to plan their migration to our new systems. We had a big company, a big customer, sorry, within Siemens, with whom we had weekly meetings for a year before they started productive usage of our systems. So it was a challenge, definitely.
This is cool. Since we're just talking, let's talk about that for a second. But I think a lot of people here are in the same position or experienced the same experience of, okay, we have some I won't call it legacy or technical debt, but some kind of project that started long ago. What can you advise? What would be your tips and tricks of moving them forward in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the build infrastructure, the pipelines, etc.?
Well, it means how flexible they are. We have different customers. Some of them end up using just one feature of Artifactory, and they write their custom scripts to accommodate that. You know, basically just resolve dependencies, upload the stuff there, and we make that available for them. We don't force every good practice on every customer, and we accept if they decide it would be too big change for them. But we have other customers who totally change their code repository. They changed all their processes. For them, we can suggest other solutions. We usually have meetings with them, and basically it's a shopping mall for solutions, because we have several choices of CI servers, we have several choices of topologies, for example. It was also a great challenge. I should mention before that many of our teams are very dispersed around the globe, so we had a lot of headache how we should choose topologies, you know, star topology, mesh topology, and we ended up making it available, but we still had some restrictions to make our configuration and operation feasible. Not let everything and every combination of solutions fly.
So this is basically what I hear is start with forward-looking teams, let them eat as much as they can, right? And others, let them, do what they can do. And also do not dictate any stack, but instead be supportive of as much as possible. And this is how you are inclusive for any type of project. And I guess for that you need a tool that works with as many technologies as possible.
Yes.
Exactly. We're about to give only some frame for the project to follow some processes we need for operating service, and everything else is free how they want to do. Do they want to write their own client tools for downloading, for configuration? Do they want to use out-of-box tools, VNext tasks or some other tasks? Do they want to use CI integration with Jenkins already as a plugin offered by JFrog, or they want to use their own PowerShell script that's up to the projects?
Yes, and I should add that a great difference between teams also that what they develop for. We have cloud projects, for example, which can use DevOps practices much better than, for example, other projects who are developed for firmware, which is not networked. It's a different story.
Yes.
Absolutely, and I think we have later today in the IoT track, actually Siemens, story about Siemens, the medical side of Siemens, and how they do development for IoT with the help of JFrog project. So if whoever is interested to hear more about what Siemens does in a different context, there is a session for you as well. So let's say there is a team that uses a certain technology stack, and they come to you and they say, well, we heard about this thing, JFrog Artifactory, sounds we might have some usage on it. Tell us more, bring us onboard us. What do you do?
Sometimes, sorry for stealing your voice, but please tell your thoughts later. So sometimes I feel like a little bit a salesman for JFrog because I show them around and many of no, sorry. Of course, I put the interest of our customers first, of course. But when I show them some of the features that can be done, many of our interested parties, basic features of JFrog also already are very exciting. You know, for example, coming from a solution where they scripted all their file storage or dumps, and seeing what Artifactory can do is already exciting to them. But later when I show X-Ray maybe, or other stuff that we have, they can be really excited.
And then they're like, ooh, that's a great stuff. Now what we do? So what do they do next?
What we will do the next. So, JFrog doesn't sleep, definitely.
No, I mean in terms of onboarding. How do you onboard those things?
Okay.
Yes.
So that was the question. Okay. Depend of the how the teams are big, smaller or bigger teams. Then we used to set up the dedicated meetings with the teams to set up the show fix. As Imre mentioned, for some teams we needed months to get it integrated with Artifactory. And in these dedicated meetings, we try to find out what is the use case of these teams, what they need. And depending on what they need, we make some kind of advertising and create a necessary environment for the teams. And we have the several lines of Artifactory service in our system. Mm-hmm. We have one development line, only dedicated for our internal usage and researching and developing. We have one integration line. That means a new project can use this line for testing different use cases they need. And we have productive line. For productive lines are only the project using this service for productive usage. Mm-hmm. And the project have chance for months, if it's necessary, to test this service, to try different stuff, to ask us to write some plugins for them or to create their own client tools. And after they are sure that they want to use this service, then they can switch to the productive line.
So you have a pipeline of onboarding projects.
Yes.
to Artifactory. This is very cool. And you mentioned CLI, and you mean JFrog CLI is one of the tools that you suggest to use?
Yes. One of the most favorite repository types of our projects is generic repository. And maybe Imre can tell us something more about usage of this.
How do you use it, and what is the use case?
Well, generic repositories are usually basically generic purposes. So many teams have their own way of deploying their and packaging their binaries. And they often come to us and say, hey, suggest something. Should I make, how should I structure my repository? How should I put my files in? And I tell them, just use the basic settings, don't overcomplicate stuff. And to them, JFrog CLI is a great help because it supports checksum uploads and downloads. This is the biggest for us. And also, you can save the configuration and or maybe invoke it securely with some CLI server with secret variables. It's a great thing for many teams who are coming from older systems, when they had their file storage solutions.
Yes. And that is definitely the first step. Some teams having some old solution and want to start using Artifactory starting with, and then with the time they're switching to the real package manager like NuGet, NPM, and so on.
So they need to do something in how they work in order to use one of the first-class packaging types, but as a first step, they can start with generic, just having a better artifact management. And you mentioned permissions and users and using this stuff. And again, this is very interesting how you manage that. So you have 6,000 people, you onboarding new teams all the time. They probably have different requirements in terms of permissions, in terms of access, in terms of authentication, authorization. So what do you use to manage this huge aspect of very diverse usage of Artifactory?
We don't. So we just shift the responsibility to our customers. We initially create a permission with a single manager, the guy who asked the repository from us, and from them on, it's their responsibility to create to populate the permission as they wish. Of course, we have them as much we can to import groups, maybe to Artifactory, to provide scripts where they can handle their properties from different servers. So we have them, but the responsibility is on them. So if we are not responsible if somebody doesn't have access or have too much access, it would be too much to us to manage.
Yes, and we're about as well to set up a kind of self-administration service and to delegate more responsibility to the projects.
Okay.
For the first step, we want to use the self-administration service for our internal staff. That means to set up the different repository on the different locations, the different permissions, and so on. And then later, it will be delegated to the projects, of course, control that, because if you don't control self-administration service, the projects misuse it, and that once you have 10,000 repositories, and you know why. But I believe the point of serving such big number of developers is to have set up the self-administration service. Without the self-administration service overloaded with work.
So what I hear is that what at least the plan is to have like something like Artifactory as a service internally, when people can create the repositories that they need, apply the permissions that they need, and it's multi-tenant, it's self-service, so it's really like as a service, and you just oversight the quotas and you check that the users and everything else, and this is very cool, and there are a lot of aspects in Artifactory, especially in the REST API, that can help you automate that. Right, repository creation and user creation and all that. And do you plan to use that?
Yes, we plan to use that. The guy working on this project sitting here by us. Yes, this is exactly what we are planning. We are about to create a web application so that we can choose which location we want to create a repository, which permissions we should set, and to push on the button, and in the background is working backend and creating the repositories for us without logging on the dedicated instance, create everything as a single entry point for administration.
And that's
service.
Basically calling bunch of Artifactory APIs.
Yes, exactly that.
We also use API for many of our configuration and operation tasks. For example, pinging the servers, see they are up. Of course, we have other monitoring solutions as well. But we also run reports on the API and a lot of other things.
So you mentioned monitoring, and that's very important, especially when you let your users consume it as a self-service. And I think one of the biggest concerns that you probably have and many others have is the storage monitoring, right? Because people are just doing crazy stuff because why not? So how do you manage with that?
So we have in place two kinds of monitoring. One is only single ping monitoring, and another is in single monitoring we have in place. That means we install the different sensors or agents on all our instances and collect the information regarding storage, CPU usage, and so on the single monitoring server, and have it monitored, and we get immediately notification if something is wrong with the system, so that we can react as soon as possible.
But that's not on the quota part, right? That's just on the service uptime and service behavior. How do you manage quotas for different projects?
At the moment, we don't have any quota for the different projects.
Okay.
We have enough storage, and they can use it, and of course, they have to pay for it.
Okay.
So if they need more, we add more. No problem. And we also have another way of monitoring. It's not primary for monitoring, but we use it for that also, which is an Elasticsearch Elk stack based log analytics system, which are very great to see if certain patterns of errors happen, or sporadic errors are appearing in our system, which are also great to spot problems before it became a really big problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. And back on quota, because I think that's kind of an issue that you have to think about when you think about providing Artifactory as self-service for different teams, because they are going to eat a lot of quota, a lot of storage. Not because they're evil, but just because the tool is good. Let's run with it for everything, right? And sometimes you come back to them and you're like, well, you use too much storage, and they're like, what do you want me to do? And here I wanted to hear your opinion on how you are going to help in cleanup, in governance, in what will be the guidelines or even the tools and the suggestions for your teams on managing the storage properly.
So we created dedicated storage reports for it, and according to the repository names assigned to the projects, assigned to the different business unit, we can track how many storage each project or each business unit uses, and we send these reports to the projects. We warn them that they have too much, and of course we get in contact with the projects and try to set up the proper cleanup processes for their stuff. For example, if they use some remote repositories, getting stuff for the central server we have set up, it's totally easy to set up some out-of-box cleanup process. Okay, delete all cached binaries not used for 1 month, for example.
And that's a built-in inside the repository settings in Artifactory.
Definitely, we don't need to do nothing else but to configure it only in user interface. And of course, there are a little bit complicated cleanup processes permanently running or should run on local repositories. And these cleanup processes should be discussed with the project. How many last version do you want to keep on your local repositories? Normally the projects have 3 stages: development, stable, and release. And of course, development stages are for the short-term usage. Stable stages are okay, last 3-4 versions. You don't need more than it. And of course, release stages are for the long term.
Forever.
But it's always up to the customers. We don't delete anything without their knowledge.
Absolutely.
And
it's more of helping them manage the binaries.
Yes.
So they're like, okay, we are, that's insane, now we want to start cleaning up, tell us how to do it, basically. So what do you suggest? Scripts called REST API, JFrog CLI, user plugins. What are the ways that you can suggest them manage that better?
Basically a script using AQL. It's very flexible. They can define their, of course, it can run on a Chrome-based or event-based, whatever they like. We can suggest them to use PowerShell or Linux shell, or well, whatever is more suitable for them. But we're also working on in the self-administration service UI for that, you know, the nice and tight UI to type your query, type your cron expression, and let's rock.
So you will manage those cleanup scripts based on requirements from different teams. So
Yes.
you sit with them and you discuss what do you want to keep. Well, in development we need 10 more, 10 last 10 in staging we need last 20. Don't touch our production. And you're like, okay, this is how the AQL looks like. Paste it here, done. You will always be up to date with your cleanup.
It's not always the same because many of our customers are very different.
Absolutely.
Some come who are used Artifactory before on their own system, and they know what they want, and they don't ask help from us because they already have scripts to manage it. Others coming don't even know what they would need, but we help them more, of course, in that case.
And so what we spoke so far is basically can be implemented in, I would say, like basic Artifactory HA, right? So what we heard about, bunch of APIs, JFrog CLI, AQL, Artifactory itself, obviously highly available, downtime, upgrades. And I wanted to ask you if you have any plans on using other tools from JFrog in the Enterprise Plus platform or any other setup of other pipelines, for example, and what's not.
Definitely. We started with Artifactory as a basic tool, and what is the next step? Which problem we faced? We have distributed systems. That means worldwide used by the developers. And what was surprising, okay, if I want to access some server in India or USA or Turkey or Europe, for each new server I have to create a new API key. And that was a little bit pain for our user. And of course, as some projects use TFS as a source code hosting system, and checking their configuration regarding integration with Artifactory central in the system and spread it to the developers worldwide, they have a problem. Okay, how one developer can find out to which server he has to log in, and if he has to log in, then he has to log in with a dedicated URL. And that was the second problem we faced. And in this case, we were totally happy to hear about Access Federation solution in Enterprise Plus with our own geo-mapping solution. So we resolved this problem with geo-mapping and distributed systems, Artifactory systems, and maybe Imre can explain more about this.
It's basically a redirection based on IP to the closest server.
Yes.
But more on other JFrog products, we have Mission Control. We also use that, and X-Ray, which is available in our dev system, but we haven't rolled that yet, but we are very excited. And also platform pipeline story is a great excitement for us. We just learned about that in this swampUP, so it's available, I think, already for us as a preview, technical preview in our dev system. We'll install it, I think, next week. So.
Nice.
Yes, and especially regarding Access Federation, we have to use Mission Control to configure our star mesh topology for Access Federation. That is one use case, and of course X-Ray is something waiting for us. That's definitely must to be done. For
No, obviously we spoke yesterday about and today how security is a very big part of building those pipelines, because you need to know that the users can trust you, especially when you start to release faster and faster, and you don't kind of throw the responsibility of quality and security on your user. Instead of saying you will find our bugs, you kind of guarantee that what you ship is security proof and quality proof, and that puts all the responsibility back on our side, and we need to make sure that our pipelines are secure and trusted and everything else.
Yes, and That's exactly what we need, because at the moment it's a manual step by us, and that's pain. That slows everything.
That has to
definitely,
go away.
definitely, because the projects using some third-party binaries in their releases, they have to start up manual clearing process and get information. Okay, everything is okay. You can use it. And if we have it integrated in the pipeline with Artifactory, it will be really great.
Yeah, it's clearly a bottleneck, and I think like everybody realized that you might compromise on it because you don't want to throw this burden over the fence to the client and say you will verify it. So you verify it yourself. That slows you down because you do it manually, and this is something obviously that needs to be automated.
Or in a separate process, and that's not the way, definitely.
And there was something else that I wanted to ask. Yes, I wanted to ask if one of your project have a use case for JFrog distribution, for shipping or distributing the binaries that are produced on Artifactory to edge nodes, and that's even more streamlining the release process.
Yes, we got several weeks ago the first request about distribution, and it will be one of the next steps for us, definitely. And we are about to set up the first cloud edge, be connected with an on-prem solution we have. And the first use case is, okay, we need to get our binaries available to be used by the machines, by the external users.
Absolutely. That's the usage.
Yes.
That's the usage for JFrog distribution.
Yes.
That's an IoT solution, just like the updating the car software that we saw earlier.
Yes, and that's the way the Siemens also wants to move, definitely. And the first project is waiting for our edge solution, and then we can start and test it, definitely.
I believe it will take a while because that's obviously a non-trivial implementation, and I think again the biggest bottleneck there is the trust.
Definitely. Trust and legal stuff.
Yeah, well, they come together, right? You need to convince your legal, and that requires a certain level of trust.
Definitely.
and especially you have on the other side someone that will now get the updates without their control, right? So you have your edge, and software is streaming like liquid software to this edge, and they need to be ready mentally and have this trust in you that you will provide software that they can almost blindly trust.
Yes. That will be definitely a challenge.
Yeah, so I bet it will take a while.
Yes, security is Maria's favorite topic. She's always have to have meetings about that, but
That's very important.
I'm very privileged to just focus on technical things, but that's not true. Security is for everybody.
Exactly.
For example, we have servers in nuclear bunkers as well, but it wouldn't mean a thing if I would have my admin password and a post-it note in my desk. So yes, it's a very, very wide topic, and there are a lot of aspects on each side of security, integrity, availability, and everything that we need to enforce. And of course, there are good ways to do that and good practices which help us.
Yeah, and I think we already spoke about a lot of future plans. So, open question: what's next? Kind of was already answered, but maybe there are some other future plans that you want to share with us. Or what else do you plan on top of what we already discussed?
So, one of the most important plans for us to set up self-administration service to be used by our users. That means to reduce work for us, to concentrate us on some innovation topics. X-ray is a big challenge for us because, as I said, we have the distributed systems. We want to cover all our instances with X-ray, and that should be really challenge. How to get it in to fit it in the process we have now with a service, and as a next step after X-ray will be distribution. Definitely, that's we follow JFrog and Enterprise Plus, and then, as we yesterday discovered, there is a shippable totally interested.
Yes.
Especially it should be interested for the new coming projects, searching for the new technology, for the new solution, and then that should be really great. And we have already talked with JFrog how we can combine it.
Yes, and I think we need to be able to provide interested customers a full DevOps solution. Well, it's not possible, of course. It's their part to have the processes, but we have all the tools now, and we should be able to help them in every aspect, from code checking to release, and delivery. And we have all the pieces now, and we just have to put them together and provide comprehensive help to them, and coach them, and also have demos available. So this is a big plan for me.
Yes. And of course we have our platforms with the customers where we are communicating, and it's totally important if you run Artifactory as a global IT service in such a big company, to be permanent in contact with customers, to inform them about the new stuff in the service and to get feedback from the customers. And these platforms are totally important as information sharing among users. And that's the big value of this service, definitely.
Yep. Well, this is great, and thank you for sharing. Ariel came just in. It means we need to stop talking now, because we cannot share anything with him. We spoke about trust, so. But this is just the beginning for you folks, and I hope you have a lot of questions that I didn't cover, and it will be a great opportunity for you to ask Maria and Imre. You know where to go. The discussion zones upstairs. There are some couches. There are some drinks, coffee. So make yourself comfortable and hit them with your questions. And for me, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for sharing with us. Thank you.